From 1960 to 2025, Cameroon's economic landscape was built, broken, and rebuilt. This is the story of Cameroon's lost giants. After independence, President Amadou Ahidjo launched a massive state-led development program. The goal was simple: build a nation. From vast agricultural plantations to sprawling railway networks, Cameroon created more than 70 state-owned enterprises. These weren't just companies. They were symbols of national pride. There was Cameroon Airlines, or Camer, whose planes connected Cameroon to the world. Regifaircam, the national railway, forged paths through dense forests and across rugged terrain. Sonel brought light and power to cities and towns. The Cameroon Development Corporation, the CDC, became an agricultural powerhouse alongside sister companies like Socapalm for palm oil, Hevicam for rubber, and Sosucam for sugar. State banks funded new projects, insurance companies secured futures, and construction firms built the very infrastructure of the new republic. Water services, shipping companies, the list went on. For 2 decades, these giants defined Cameroon's post-colonial dream. But years later, they would also become symbols of its near economic collapse. In the mid-1980s, the dream began to crumble. Global commodity prices for oil, cocoa, and coffee, the lifeblood of Cameroon's economy, crashed. The country was plunged into a deep recession. The once mighty state companies were already struggling. Decades of mismanagement, crippling debt, widespread corruption, and aging, neglected equipment had taken their toll. Factories fell silent, trains sat broken on rusting tracks, and once bustling offices became empty shells. The economic crisis that had been simmering beneath the surface finally boiled over. By the early 1990s, with the state on the brink of bankruptcy, the government turned to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank for a lifeline. The help came with a condition, a non-negotiable demand that would reshape the nation's economy forever: privatize, restructure, liquidate. This ultimatum triggered one of the largest and most dramatic waves of state enterprise reform ever seen in Central Africa. The era of the state-owned giants was officially coming to an end. Let's take a closer look at the companies themselves, more than 30 of them, what they were, and what ultimately happened to them. First, Cameroon Airlines. Founded in 1971, Camer was the soaring symbol of Cameroon's national identity, its beautiful logo recognized across Africa and Europe. For years, it was a source of immense pride. But behind the scenes, a toxic mix of political interference, deep-rooted corruption, and staggering debts was slowly grounding the airline. The problems became too big to ignore, and in 2008, the national carrier collapsed. It was eventually replaced by a new company, Camer Co., which has struggled with its own significant challenges ever since, a turbulent reminder of its predecessor's fate. Next, the railways. Regifaircam, the national railway company, was the steel spine of the country, moving goods and people for decades. But by the 1990s, it too was in decline. In 1999, the state-run entity was officially dissolved. Its operations, tracks, and trains were handed over to Camrail, a private concessionaire managed by a foreign consortium. This transfer marked the definitive end of state-run rail transport in Cameroon, a historic shift in how the country moved. Then there was electricity. Sonel, the National Electricity Corporation, had been responsible for powering the country since independence. But plagued by underinvestment and inefficiency, it was privatized in 2001. An American company, AES, took control, creating AES Sonel. Years later, AES sold its stake to new investors, and today, the utility is known as Enio. While the name has changed, the challenge of providing reliable power remains a constant, familiar struggle for millions of Cameroonians. Perhaps the most iconic of all was the Cameroon Development Corporation, or CDC. At its peak, this agro-industrial giant was one of the largest employers in the entire country, managing vast plantations of bananas, rubber, palm oil, and tea. But starting in the 1990s, its empire began to shrink. Its valuable tea estates were sold off, operations were painfully restructured, and its finances deteriorated. The CDC survives today, but as a mere shadow of its former self, its dilapidated buildings a testament to a bygone era of agricultural dominance. Soca Palm, the state palm oil corporation, followed a similar path. It was privatized in June 2000 and is now controlled by multinational investors. The deal remains one of Cameroon's most controversial privatizations, raising ongoing questions about land rights, labor conditions, and the flow of profits out of the country. The state's sugar projects, some dating back to the 1960s under names like Sosukam and Kamsuko, were also reorganized and partially privatized throughout the 1990s. Some assets were sold, while others were dissolved altogether, ending the state's direct role in the sweet business. Havacom, the national rubber company, was privatized in the 1990s, its sprawling plantations handed over to new private owners. Camship, the national shipping line that once connected Douala to global ports, was restructured, its role absorbed by private maritime logistics firms. And Camtainer, along with other state-run freight companies, was either liquidated or reorganized out of existence. The wave of transformation swept across the entire economy. Sodecoton, the cotton giant of the north, faced repeated privatization attempts. Bisec, a major state bank, was sold to private investors in 2000. SCDP, the petroleum depot company, and Sonara, the national oil refinery, underwent major restructuring. Port services once run by Socamak were privatized. The national water utility, Esniki, was handed over to a private concession. Camtel, the state telecommunications company, saw its monopoly broken by market liberalization. The list goes on. The urban transport company in Yaoundé and Douala, Sotuk, simply collapsed. Ambitious state-run rice and agricultural projects like Semri and Soderim were dissolved or sold off. State-owned construction firms, printing presses, and manufacturing regis were liquidated. Even the state-owned hotels and tourism enterprises were sold. Across banking, agriculture, transport, telecoms, and manufacturing, almost every major enterprise created under Ahidjo was either sold, restructured, or dismantled during President Biya's long tenure. Some of these transitions genuinely improved efficiency and service delivery. Others, however, simply replaced a public monopoly with a private one, with little benefit to the average citizen. And for many, these changes broke the vital link between public enterprise and the mission of national development. So, what remains in 2025? Today, Cameroon's economy is largely driven by private or mixed ownership companies. You see the names on the side of buildings and trucks: Enio, Camrail, Socapalm. You might catch a glimpse of a Khmer plane, but only a handful of the original state corporations from the Ahidjo era survive in any recognizable form. The age of the big public enterprises, those powerful symbols of a young, ambitious nation, has definitively passed into history. Whether this wave of privatizations ultimately saved Cameroon's economy or weakened, it is a question that is still fiercely debated today. But what is undeniable is that the giants of the Ahidjo era shaped the lives of generations of workers, built the foundations of the modern state, and defined Cameroon's early economic identity. If you want a part 2, diving deeper into the controversies, the scandals, or even the surprising successes behind each of these privatizations, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next documentary.